Hi, and welcome to another edition of social.DESIGN designer interviews, wherein we interview designers for you guys, designer profiles, designer stories, so that you can learn from their craft, and from how they crafted their own career. And as of the moment, we are in GCQ. The Philippines is now under GCQ, or General Community Quarantine. We are still being advised to have that physical distancing, but that doesn't mean we should socially distance. So right now we have an interview from across the pond. Medyo malayo yung distansya nito. They are focusing on motion design. The studio is called Rezonate. And amazingly, I met them before, way back then, 10 years ago pa, from the first Graphica Manila event. So call them now. Team us here. All right, so thank you for saying yes to this ISO Show Distancing Designer interviews. Welcome to the show. Resonate. So thank you. I mean, saying yes to this is a big deal for me.
Oh my gosh.
Being asked is a big deal for us.
Oh, I think being asked was a big deal for us.
No. I mean, kasi, just to share, as background, I've met you, I've met you guys from afar, from the stage, because of Graphica Manila before. And now I'm interviewing you guys, so it's an honor for me. So there.
Well, thank you.
So, kamusta naman kayo dyan in New York?
Surviving naman. It's been, I think that this whole idea when there was a lockdown or quarantine, we really had to rethink about the company and the business. Of course, that's one of the big things. Parang ano yung future natin? What's gonna happen? Kasi even this couple of months, a lot of people here have no jobs. So that's one of the things that our main concern is: how do we keep jobs? How do we survive? But at the same time, how do we excel after 2020? So we're really looking at 2021, 2022. Like, how can we get to that point?
I think for a lot of us, if you've had problems before the pandemic in your business or in your practice, the pandemic is just gonna exacerbate that. So I think that's what's been happening. Nico and I have been taking the chance to really look at the company and how we run it and how we can improve it. I used to think that the pandemic was an extinction level event for business, which it is. But I've also learned to realize that it accelerates everything into the future. If you asked us in the beginning of 2020, your whole workforce was going to transition into work from home, would be like, you're kidding. That can't happen.
Yeah.
But it has happened.
It's weird. Yeah. It's
so
weird.
Actually, diba? It's really weird. So if you think about it, anyone that has a Wi-Fi can steal your job. And it's no longer local.
It's global.
Borderless. It's global. So if you just sit down with that idea, you realize the impact of this. And there's no way you can go back to the past. So I think for us and for me and Nico, it's always parang when that realization which trickled in, it's not like a 180 you were sitting and then this is the new life. It's like slowly you're chipping away and sort of grieving the past, because you really need to let it go. Even if the quarantine will be lifted, there's so much devastation that it's just you just have to move forward and not go back. So for me, Nico, that's been a constant practice in being aware of that and reminding and being kind to each other to always look forward.
Yeah, and this idea of like this new normal, we decided like, who's dictating this thing? And also, I think when we talked to a lot of people, a lot of them, it's more like they want to go back to the way it was. And we just thought like, let's move forward and, like redesign what this new rules are, or like the new normal. Like let's decide it as opposed to reacting to it, from everyone else. So that's what we've been trying to do, is really look forward, change, and redesign, what's new.
Right, because that's the power of designing. So, but before, that's the power of design.
Yeah, it is.
So, but before anything else, I want you guys to introduce yourself, like yung studio nyo, because I'm really excited for this one. This is something that's say I've been interviewing designers left and right. So now we have motion design in the forefront. So can you introduce yourselves?
Hi, so I am Katwo Puertollano. I am the co-owner and the global design director for Rezonate. Rezonate transforms ideas into exciting stories, helping businesses build new audiences to forge the new future together.
So Katsu, wait. So how do you do that?
So
Wow.
we do that by transforming ideas into exciting stories.
Yeah,
Right.
using animation, using video. So there's different disciplines, there's, and I think we've gone beyond the idea of just motion graphics at this point, because I think, as you said, right, there's things that these mediums can do to actually change the world. And it's funny because you brought up Graphica Manila, and I remember in one of those talks we were discussing on how graphic design can really change the world, and we're seeing that now. And it's not just about like, the colorful colors or layout. It's really about the idea or the iterations or the relationships you build during these processes.
Right, because from our perspective, kasi the reason why I'm focusing on you guys and motion design is because I believe that graphic design is the foundation of things. Then there are now different what do you call this, yung mga yari, UX design, and
Mm-hmm.
then kasi nagba-branch out siya pero the foundation is graphic design. Now, level up natin. So my question for you guys is, so can you discuss, like, if you're going to explain how do you plan for motion design? How are you going to explain it for like a 4-year-old, something like that?
Okay, well, let's assume the 4-year-old knows like graphics or like Photoshop or something. And I would usually define motion graphics, or at least, like the tools that you would use. It's graphic design, except they move. And that's the real big difference with it, and you can really dictate and decide and create worlds that move, which is amazing. I think nowadays, like motion design and animation, motion graphics, they kind of blend into one category. And a lot of it is, before that term motion design didn't really exist. It was really just motion graphics or animation, and then motion design came in. So if you think about it, even the connection of those two words, it's now you're using either design thinking or graphic design methods during the idea of motion. So it's not just the idea of moving graphics anymore. It's like, how do you think about graphics? It's about layout. It's about the typography that you use. It's like, how do you express this information that's moving or complex information into something simple and, and exciting.
But at the heart of it, I feel like aside from, a very nice way of saying the graphic design that moves, the heart of it is storytelling and how you can convey a message and an idea and create an impact. So the people who are receiving it will feel either moved by the experience of receiving either the film or the video. And that's really the goal, is to be, and even in journalism, even in graphic design, what you're trying to do is you're trying to message, you're trying to send a message and tell a story.
That was well thought of an answer, and ang ganda ng pagkaka-explain on how motion design works. Another question pala with that is, parang, did you actually start na parang before you decided na, oh, sige, I really would like to do motion design and have this as a niche?
Okay, well, I think my background has been motion design. I mean, I came out of college wanting to do my originally what I really wanted to do was create title sequences. And so when I got out of college, so from the very beginning, that was already like in the back of my head. Originally I wanted to be first. Okay, so my process was, first I was going to be a photographer, and then that became more of an editor, and then from editing I wanted to do graphic design, and then the two that met was like editing plus graphic design became title sequences. I was like, oh, okay. And this is back in like, in mid 90s. Yes, I am that old. And 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 then when I got out of college, it just it just blended this idea of moving graphics, and then so graphic design. And so I was already in that field. So when I got out of college, I was already working for a VFX house and a design house doing motion graphics. Ikaw naman, Katu.
Well, for me, I did not really have like some people, I didn't really know that this was what I wanted to do. But growing up, I've always been the artist. I've always been interested in storytelling and style. But for me, I graduated with a communication arts degree from Ateneo. And because of that, and graphic design was an elective. I was like one class. I had one class in graphic design, but this is what I wanted to do. So my path was really, I kind of just like wanted to do this. Luckily, I met my husband Nico and I was in college right at the time when someone could show me that this is a path and this is a career that you can have. So I started out as an illustrator. And then, kind of, when we started the business together, it was just like falling naturally into positions that I felt I had the gumption to do. So I really did not have a plan when I was in college of what the future was gonna look like. But I'm a pretty responsible person. I have good leadership skills. I'm very hardworking, and I connect really well with coworkers and employees. And all those skills crystallized made me the gave me the career that I've built over the years.
Wow. Amazing lang yung background pala is, well, I think the term before was broadcast design,
Yes.
if not mistaken, because I heard that from, well, where else? But from Graphica Manila. So, parang, again, I wasn't a designer back then. So, seeing those things, parang, oh, meron palang ganong career. So, the reason why also I have these videos is so that others perhaps would be as inspired as I was before. So, that was the goal. So next question would be, can you give us a case study wherein it really gave you some, not favorite, but more of a challenge in terms of how do we tell a story through motion design?
You want to take this up, Katu?
Well, every project that we have always has to go through two levels of thinking. One is when you're doing design, you always have to go through the design thinking phase, right? So there's research, there's insights. If you are working in a world where we call stills, meaning it doesn't have to move, that's the end of your process. The next level is when you have to consider a production of you start working within the film language. That's where the differences are. Now it'll be hard to say na parang every project is the same, which I've realized over the years. Never treat each project the same. Some projects, the challenges will be client based, meaning sometimes the leadership is murky on what they want. Sometimes the challenge is the length of time. Sometimes the challenge is that you're limited with using or inheriting assets that the clients insist on. Sometimes the challenges are your teams. But if you are looking at a case study, is there something more specific that in our works that you'd want us to walk you through so we could give clarity to your audience of this is what it takes to get there?
Can you share some, like a specific case?
Nico, I mean, on our Instagram, and I think one of the reasons why we got on the show, luckily, was because of pandemics, which is like a very timely project right now. Nico, I'm going to share can I share my screen? You want to start before the actual production, meaning the pieces?
Sure. Okay. So the background with this is we were working with a production company on this, and basically, we've done a lot of things for them. And what they do is they do documentary types of stories, and usually what they do is they leave sections that are blank. Like they want something in there, but they're unsure of what it is and how to visualize it because they want to have graphics as opposed to shooting something. So what they do is they come to us with a script, and it's an AV script. So on one column, like basically a piece of paper with a column that says audio, and it says all the VO work is there, and then on one side says video, which is all the descriptions of what they're going to show that syncs with the audio. And then there's portions there that are either blank or portions that are have some idea what they want to see in there. And then our job is to go through it, and then we dissect all this information because a lot of it's also infographics. It's also kind of like facts and numbers and and figures. So a lot of it is like we go in and we read that, and then we try to figure out how to visualize these things for them, ask them questions, trying to figure out what really makes sense. What are you trying to say in this section exactly? And while that's happening, we're also having a different conversation about look. Like, what kind of look are you going for? Is this something that's more, kind of techie looking? Is it something more organic looking? Like, and then what they do is they would give us references, or we call pegs, of like things that they like, and then things they want to kind of go with. And then, so while that's happening, we're helping with a script. We're trying to figure out the look. Then we come up with a deck and we present to them these ideas that we have in terms of the color, some style frames that we designed to see if this works for you guys. So here's an example of a color palette. So in a deck, we would, we would show the color palette on what we think the overall color and moods are, the exact numbers of the shades of the colors, typography, and then icons. So we design all these different icons to get approvals on like, does this look good to you guys? Does this make sense? And also we explain why. So this is an example of a style frame where we would show in this section, this is what we think it's going to look like. And then we get their buy-ins, they give their feedback, etc. So with this one, we kind of went for more something kind of dark and techie because it was like a global event, and they keep talking about how things are going from, when you travel. So we kind of went for this kind of sci-fi, G-Monk inspired kind of stuff. So again, these were all style frames. And then once they agree to it, then what we do is we make a storyboard based on all this stuff. We make style frames for them. First, they're just sketches, and then we improve them and turning into actual design frames. Then once all of that is locked, then the next step is to actually animate. We never really animate until we get an approval on the look. So it's almost like if you're doing graphic, just stills, it's like once the stills are approved, then we animate at that point. Since it was a documentary, sometimes some of the facts may be adjusting as we're going along, or sometimes when they do a cut or an edit, whatever they originally had, they thought they wanted to say changed. So we also had to be flexible, but at the same time, we have to be flexible to a point where we don't get ourselves in trouble where we're in the animation pipeline and then there's a big change in the story. So we were very cautious about like at what point can we start to really animate? And also we want to make sure that some of these things where when we animate them, it's not so difficult to do those quick changes. So if you're doing character animation, for example, it would be really challenging to make those, quick changes or changes later on when, let's say, the story or the idea changed. So when that happens, like we have some projects like that, and that's where really, really wait before we start to animate any characters. But for this one, since it's mostly like motion graphics and icons, it was a bit easier in terms of any kind of like change, but we still made sure at that point. So that's kind of like the challenges. Like this is just this for an example, going back and forth, facts and ideas changing, and being very flexible and nimble to make those adjustments, and also presenting it, because some of these things are like, infographic, data information, and then we had to digest what this data meant, and then was it really what they were trying to say? So again, if you think about journalism, it's the same idea. We take these facts and stuff, and we look, and does it make sense to you guys? What are you really trying to say? Because the way that these things are laid out, doesn't say what you want it to say, right? And then it was. I mean, they were great to work with because we got to really contribute. They were really listening in terms of like what made more sense, and then how can we condense, let's say, a long paragraph into like, a short, let's say, 5-second animation. Does that help?
So I was mesmerized kasi on what I've been seeing, and because I was tagged in this post before, but I already knew you guys before I was even tagged. So this was really a helpful discussion on how one can actually create a motion design. But I don't want to take much of your time. This would be my last question for you guys. So my last question would be: can you give us 3 basic tips on creating great motion design? So if you could give us like 3 summarized points on how do you actually make, what are these 3 tips?
Okay, well, my first one, which I tell everyone, and just in terms of, we're talking about skills. We're not even talking about we're not even talking about the idea of strategies or anything. But the way I learned it is, if you really like something that you've seen, copy it. This is about skills, about how to improve your skill level. There's nothing wrong with copying and then improving and seeing if you can it's almost like reverse engineering.
Yeah.
If you saw something that was animated, can you copy it and duplicate and learn from it and learn on how those nuances work? And then maybe you can find something to improve on. So that's kind of how I did for a long time, because it really helps to become, things to be muscle memory. It helps you understand software on how things work. But it also makes you, it's a way to practice without having to think too much on, anong idea, anong magandang gawin.
Yeah.
Then first do it. Then you're not thinking too much about the concept. You're just really harnessing skill.
Yeah.
So that's one.
Second would be, I would recommend being highly organized. Like motion design is a very challenging field. You need to be very skilled, Number two, you need to be very organized in terms of how you think, and then in terms of managing your project, because it's a very highly systematized. I mean, one of the things that I like about it is that it gives a lot of freedom, but there's also that paradox. You only actually get to create those unimagined worlds before if you can get yourself organized to execute accordingly. So there's a lot of phases, from the design to the storyboarding to animatics, animation tests. You need to be able to step back and understand the whole picture, and then come in with your skills and attack it. So being highly organized, underrated, very needed.
Um, okay, I know you only said 3, but I have 2 more. There's one, sorry, freebie. Um, one would be, the motion design or animation industry is pretty big. And people think that if you want to be in it, that you have to be an animator. That's not true. So that's one thing as a tip for everyone else who wants to be in this industry, who wants to be part of that and have their work animated. You don't necessarily have to be an animator, because in this whole process, we need storyboard artists, we need concept artists, and we also need designers. So a lot of those stuff that you see that moves, sometimes those are just done by a designer or an illustrator, and then an animator is the one that animates. So in terms of the industry itself, there's lots of sections where as either a photographer, as a someone who's doing research and design, you guys have a slot within this industry. So it's not just like, for example, if you go graphic design, it's pretty much you do graphic design, it's stills, right? It's if you know how to use either InDesign, Photoshop, or Illustrator. But within in this industry, there's lots of sections where you can come in and participate and be part of it. I had a freebie. Now I forgot what the freebie was.
Improve your multi-personal skills, because this is a highly collaborative process, and it really helps if you're friends with the people you're working with.
All right, so those are all your tips, and really, I'm really amazed on those tips, and I hope the viewers would also, learn a lot from what you just gave. And for me, it's comforting to know that even us as a graphic designer, I can even chip into the process, diba? So,
oh yeah, most definitely.
So thank you so much for your time. I know that, are you just starting your day?
Yes.
So there. I don't want to take much of your time. So thank you so much for this interview. And much like any other videos, I'll be placing your links below in the description so that they could follow you guys, because I've been following you guys since 2006, since before all of this has started. So there. Thank you so much for your time, Nico and Kat. So
yeah, I just want to one last thing, since we talked about like links and stuff, you can also just, besides following us, please, you can ask us questions. We do have a group called the Creative Brief, and that's where anyone can ask questions. So it's, you can ask your direct questions to either us, our team, and we're here to help. We want to be able to kind of uplift everyone else and really be part of this community. And also to watch out for, we're brewing something new for people who want to freelance or remote work, and really how to get into this industry. But really it's about community building. So watch out for that. It's going to be called The Art of Working. And that'll be happening very soon, and I'll give you more information about that later on.
All right, that's very exciting even for us. So I hope that after this we can collaborate on something else, or perhaps meet you in person. If not here, then I'll go there.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Hopefully. So there. Thank you so much, guys. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning here at SAW.DESIGN PH, and we hope you enjoyed this episode of Social.DESIGN Designer Introduction. Our goal is telling Philippine graphic design stories. If you'd like more content like this, how about clicking the subscribe button here? I think it's here, so you get more video resources about graphic design. And we're expecting to see you watching again here at SAW.DESIGN PH.